Close your eyes for a moment, and imagine a gentle dawn breaking over the Valley of Mexico. The air is cool, the waters of Lake Texcoco shimmer softly, and the mists rise above the marshlands where the Aztecs once walked. This is where our journey begins. A story whispered across centuries, a story not of battles or noise, but of quiet tales woven from the threads of mythology. Tonight, I will tell you of the Aztecs, a people who looked to the sky, to the earth, and to the sacred heart of life itself. The Aztecs believed that the world was alive with divine power. They did not see the sun as merely a ball of fire in the heavens, but as a sacred being, a god who must be nourished. The moon was not a pale reflection of light, but a spirit with stories of her own. The stars above, scattered across the velvet of the night, were thought to be the souls of warriors and the companions of gods. Nothing was ordinary. Every stone, every reed, every drop of water, was part of the sacred story of creation. Long before the Aztecs built their great capital city of Tenochtitlan, they believed the universe had already been created and destroyed many times. This idea gave rise to what they called the five suns. Each sun was not just the bright light in the sky, but an entire age of the world, a cycle of time with its own gods, its own people, and its own destiny. In the first age, the world was ruled by the great jaguar. It was said that giants walked the earth, but the gods grew displeased with them. The jaguars descended and devoured those ancient people, and the sun of that age was extinguished. A new sun rose, and with it, a new world. The second age was the time of wind. In this era, people lived once again, but the mighty god of storms sent fierce hurricanes that swept them away. Those who survived were transformed into monkeys, left to leap among the trees, reminding future generations of what once had been. Then came the third sun, the time of fire. The skies rained flames, and the world burned. The people of that time could not withstand the inferno, and they perished in the great heat. A new world had to be born from the ashes. The fourth sun was the time of water. The seas rose, the rains poured without end, and the land was swallowed by floods. People turned into fish, and the age of water claimed the earth. And then, the gods gathered to create the world anew, the world of the fifth sun, the age we live in now. But this sun, they said, was fragile. It could only shine if nourished with offerings, with ritual, with devotion. The Aztecs understood themselves as the keepers of this delicate balance. The sun rose each morning only because the people gave of themselves to keep the great wheel of life turning. In the quiet of night, when the fire of day had set beyond the western mountains, the Aztecs would look upward. They would see the Milky Way, which they believed to be a celestial road, a pathway for souls. They would watch the moon as she drifted across the sky, and they would whisper stories of the rabbit that lived upon her face. For in Aztec myth, the rabbit became a symbol of sacrifice and humility, a gentle reminder that even small beings could shape the heavens. The heart of Aztec mythology is filled with such stories, tales of gods who gave of themselves to form the world, of spirits who became mountains and rivers, of transformations where death became life again. This understanding was not frightening to them. Instead, it was comforting. To the Aztecs, endings were not endings, but beginnings in another form. Imagine, now, the calm waters of Lake Texcoco once again. The people who would later build their empire were wanderers at first, guided by visions. They carried with them their god, Huitzilopochtli, the hummingbird of the south, the god of the sun and of war. Yet in this story, let us think of him not as a fearsome figure, but as a guiding light. He whispered to them that one day, they would find their home, a sacred place where an eagle perched upon a cactus would devour a serpent. That vision would come true, and there they would raise their great city. But that, dear listener, is for later chapters. Tonight, in this first tale, we linger only on the foundations, the gentle beginnings of Aztec thought. The world was not simple, but layered, rich, and filled with meaning. To the Aztecs, the universe was not still, but always alive, breathing, moving, cycling through ages, like the rise and fall of one's breath. As you listen, let your own breath fall into rhythm. Inhale, like the birth of a new sun. Exhale, like the quiet dusk of an old age. You, too, are part of this endless story of creation and renewal. The Aztecs knew that to live was to participate in the great harmony of existence. The crops in the fields, the waters that nourished them, the mountains that guarded the horizon, all of these were sacred. The myths were not just old tales, but instructions on how to see the world with reverence. And so, as the mist drifts over the waters of ancient Mexico, we leave this first chapter with a soft thought: the world you see is alive, just as it was alive for the Aztecs. Every sunrise is a new creation. Every nightfall is a reminder of the endless cycle. And in between, in the quiet hours when stories are told, we are all keepers of the fifth sun, dreamers beneath the stars, listeners to the quiet tales of mythology. Rest now with that thought, knowing that this is only the beginning. Many more stories await, stories of gods, of heroes, of creation and transformation. But for now, let us close this chapter gently, as the first sun sets on our journey into Aztec myth. Settle in once more, breathe gently, and let the world of the Aztecs open before you like a quiet dream. In the last chapter, we spoke of the 5 suns, the great cycles of creation and destruction. Tonight, we move a little closer, into the hearts of the gods themselves, for in Aztec thought, even the divine were not distant, untouchable beings. They lived, they struggled, they sacrificed, and in their stories, we find the reflection of all life. At the center of Aztec mythology stands Teotihuacan, the legendary city of the gods. It was not the earthly city that the ruins remind us of today, but a sacred place in myth, the gathering point of deities at the end of the 4th sun. Here, when the world had been drowned by waters and lay in darkness, the gods convened to decide how the 5th sun would be born. Imagine a great fire at the center of a vast clearing. The gods stood around it, their forms shimmering in the eternal twilight. They asked, who will become the new sun? Who will leap into the flames and sacrifice themselves so that light may return to the world? 2 gods stepped forward. The first was Tezcatlipoca, a proud and wealthy god, adorned with feathers, precious stones, and fine garments. He believed himself worthy of the honor. The second was Nanahuatzin, humble, poor, covered in sores. He had no fine jewels, no costly robes, only his quiet courage and his willingness to give everything. The fire roared in the center. The gods prepared the ritual. It was time for the leap. Tezcatlipoca was asked to go first. He approached the flames once, twice, 3 times, but each time he faltered. The heat was too great, the flames too fierce, and his pride crumbled before his fear. Then it was Nanahuatzin's turn. The humble god closed his eyes. Without hesitation, without pride, he stepped forward and threw himself into the fire. The flames consumed him, and his body transformed into brilliant light. He rose into the heavens as the sun, shining over a new world. Ashamed of his failure, Tezcatlipoca, the proud one, finally leapt into the fire as well. He too became a sun, glowing with light. But there could not be 2 suns in the sky. The other gods, seeing the arrogance that still clung to him, struck his face with a rabbit, dimming his brightness. And so, he became the moon, his light forever lesser than the true sun. If you look up at the moon today, you may still see the shadow of that rabbit, the mark of this ancient tale. This story tells us something essential about the Aztec way of seeing. Greatness was not found in wealth, nor in pride, but in humility, sacrifice, and courage. The most unlikely, the most modest, could become the light of the world. But the myth does not end here. When the sun rose for the first time, it did not move. It stood still in the heavens, glowing but motionless. The gods realized that something more was needed. They had given Nanahuatzin's body to the fire. But the sun demanded more, it demanded the blood and essence of the gods themselves. And so, one by one, the deities offered their hearts. They gave their life force, their energy, their very being to set the sun into motion. Only with their sacrifice did the sun begin to travel across the sky, bringing day, bringing warmth, and giving the fifth world its rhythm of time. This is the foundation of Aztec belief: the universe is alive because of sacrifice. The gods gave themselves so that the world could exist, and in return, humans, too, must give back, continuing the cycle of reciprocity. It was not cruelty to the Aztecs, but balance, the natural exchange between life and the divine. Now, imagine the quiet of an early morning in Tenochtitlan. The priests rise before dawn, their silhouettes outlined against the pale glow of the lake. They prepare offerings to the rising sun, for they remember the gift of Nanahuatzin. Without his leap into the fire, there would be no warmth, no light, no life. They whisper prayers into the soft air, their voices mingling with the call of water birds, their words a gentle reminder that every day is a gift bought by the courage of a humble god. The Aztecs told many such tales, but always, they circled back to this truth: life is sustained by giving. Just as corn must be planted, nourished, and harvested to feed the people, so must the people give something back to nourish the gods. This understanding shaped their rituals, their art, and their very sense of purpose in the universe. As we linger in this chapter, let the story of Nanahuatzin settle over you like a soft blanket. His humility is a quiet strength, a strength born not of riches or power, but of devotion. His leap into the fire is not a tale of destruction, but of transformation, the moment when suffering becomes light, when sacrifice becomes the source of all life. Think of the balance it suggests. The sun rises because something was given. The moon shines with a softer glow, because pride was humbled. And the stars, scattered across the night, remind us of countless others who offered themselves for the sake of harmony. In the stillness of night, the Aztecs believed, the world was fragile. If the people forgot their role, if they stopped honoring the sacrifices that gave them life, the sun might falter. Time itself could end. But as long as offerings were given, songs, prayers, devotion, and yes, sometimes blood, the great wheel of existence would keep turning. And so, with every dawn, they retold this story. Not with noise, but with reverence. They remembered Nanahuatzin, the god who had nothing, and yet gave everything. As you rest with this tale tonight, you may think of your own life. Perhaps there is a quiet strength within you, something small yet powerful, ready to shine when called upon. For in every heart there is a spark of Nanahuatzin, a willingness to give, a courage to endure, and a light that can rise even from the humblest flame. This is how the Aztecs saw their world. Sacred. Alive. Born from the sacrifices of gods. And in that gentle understanding, they found their place, not above creation, not ruling over it, but as caretakers, participants in the great exchange of life. Let the image stay with you: the fire at Teotihuacan, the humble god leaping into the flames, the first light of the new sun stretching across the horizon, and the soft glow of the moon, bearing the mark of the rabbit. These are the beginnings of Aztec mythology, whispered across centuries, carried into the night so that even now, we may listen. Close your eyes once more and imagine the soft twilight sky over ancient Mexico. The air carries the faint scent of flowers, and the distant song of birds echoes in the valley. Tonight, we turn to two of the most important deities in Aztec mythology, brothers, rivals, and shapers of the world, Quetzalcoatl and Tezcatlipoca. These two gods embody balance. They are opposites, yet they cannot exist without one another. Their stories are filled with conflict, but also with creation. Together, they remind us that harmony often comes through tension, just as night balances day, and calm balances storm. Quetzalcoatl, whose name means feathered serpent, was a god of wind, learning, and life itself. He was often imagined as a shining serpent with the brilliant feathers of the quetzal bird, a symbol of beauty, wisdom, and renewal. He carried the breath of creation, the gentle wind that stirs the fields and gives motion to the skies. Tezcatlipoca, whose name means smoking mirror, was different. He was mysterious, powerful, a god of night, of sorcery, of destiny. He carried with him an obsidian mirror, polished black stone in which one might see visions of the past or the future. He ruled over chance, change, and the hidden truths of existence. In Aztec myth, the world as we know it was born from the work of these two. Long ago, before the age of the fifth sun, the heavens were divided, the waters were vast, and from the primordial sea emerged a monstrous being, Tezcatlipoca, a great crocodile-like creature, covered in mouths and teeth. She floated in the endless waters, devouring whatever came near. Quetzalcoatl and Tezcatlipoca knew that from this chaos, the ordered world must be created. Together, they devised a plan. They lured Tezcatlipoca with bait, and then they struck. They seized her mighty body and pulled with all their strength. In the struggle, Tezcatlipoca lost one of his feet, bitten off by the beast. Yet, through their combined effort, they tore Tezcatlipoca apart. From her vast body, they shaped the world. Her flesh became the earth. Her hair became the trees and grasses. Her bones became the mountains. Her tears became the rivers and springs. From her back, the surface of the land stretched out, and from her body flowed the fertile soil that would one day nourish maize and feed humankind. But Tezcatlipoca, though torn apart, did not perish. She still lived, and as she wept, her cries became the promise of sacrifice. She demanded that in return for her body, which had become the world, she would always be nourished with offerings. Thus, from the very beginning, the earth was sacred, living, and deserving of respect. The story of Tezcatlipoca teaches us something very deep. For the Aztecs, the earth itself was not inert stone and soil, it was alive, conscious, and filled with memory. Every crop, every harvest, every gift of the ground was born from sacrifice, and to live upon it was to acknowledge that gift. Quetzalcoatl and Tezcatlipoca did not stop there. They raised the heavens, they placed the four directions, and they gave form to time and space. In some stories, they set the sun and moon in motion. In others, they shaped the very first humans from the bones of the underworld. In all, their presence was inseparable from creation itself. Yet, they were not always at peace. Their rivalry colored many myths. Quetzalcoatl was seen as gentle, a bringer of knowledge, patron of priests, the god who gifted maize and learning. Tezcatlipoca, by contrast, was unpredictable, fierce, sometimes cruel. He ruled over warriors, sorcery, and the darker aspects of fate. But both were necessary. One could not exist without the other, just as creation requires both order and chaos. Imagine for a moment the quiet of an Aztec temple at night. The priests light incense, the smoke curling like soft clouds into the starlit sky. They whisper prayers to both Quetzalcoatl and Tezcatlipoca, knowing that each god holds a part of the truth. The wind stirs gently, carrying the fragrance of copal resin, while the obsidian mirror reflects the flickering flame. In this stillness, one can almost feel the presence of both gods, side by side, forever bound in the shaping of the cosmos. Quetzalcoatl was often associated with the morning star, Venus rising before dawn, herald of light and renewal. Tezcatlipoca, meanwhile, was linked with the night sky, with jaguars that prowled in the dark, and with the mysteries that unfold when the world is asleep. Together, they formed a cycle, dawn and dusk, life and death, breath and silence. The Aztecs told these stories not as entertainment, but as truths that explained their place in the universe. By listening to the myths of Quetzalcoatl and Tezcatlipoca, they were reminded of the balance within themselves. For every gentle breath of kindness, there is also the strength of shadow. For every bright star, there is also the depth of night. And so, when they looked at the mountains that encircled the valley, when they walked upon the soil that grew their maize, when they saw the river glisten in the moonlight, they remembered Tezcatlipoca, the living earth. They remembered the sacrifice of the gods who tore her apart, and the sacred duty that fell to humans to continue that cycle of giving. As you rest with this story tonight, let its images drift through your thoughts. The feathered serpent gliding through the air, his emerald feathers shimmering in the sun. The smoking mirror held in a god's hand, reflecting not just what is, but what may be. The great Tezcatlipoca, her vast body forming the mountains beneath your feet. And above it all, the stars turning in their endless dance, reminding us that the cosmos is alive, vast, and deeply interconnected. The tale of Quetzalcoatl and Tezcatlipoca is not one of simple beginnings, but of struggle, of balance, of transformation. It teaches us that from chaos can come creation, and from rivalry can come harmony. Tonight, as you drift towards sleep, you may feel the same balance in your own life, the gentle pull between calm and strength, between rest and activity, between light and shadow. For in your own heart, there is a feathered serpent, carrying wisdom and renewal. And there is also a smoking mirror, mysterious and deep, reflecting truths that cannot always be spoken aloud. Both are part of you, just as they are part of the world. And so, with this chapter, we close our eyes gently, knowing that the world we walk upon is sacred, that it was born of sacrifice, and that every breath we take is a continuation of the balance set forth by the gods long ago. Settle yourself once more, feel the quiet rhythm of your breath, like the slow rise and fall of the sun across the horizon. Tonight, our story turns to one of the most cherished gifts in Aztec mythology, the creation of human beings and the sacred grain that sustained their lives, maize, the golden corn that was both food and symbol of life itself. The Aztecs believed that humanity was not born once, but shaped again and again, just as the world had passed through many suns. After the destruction of the earlier ages, there was a time when no people lived upon the earth. The gods, dwelling in the heavens, saw the empty land and decided that humankind must be created anew. But how could they bring life once more to the world? It was Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, who took it upon himself to find the answer. He descended into the Underworld, the realm of Mictlan, where the bones of the dead were kept. These bones, he knew, held the essence of past humanity, and from them, new life could be shaped. The journey was not easy. Quetzalcoatl faced many trials, for the Lord and Lady of Mictlan did not give up their treasures lightly. He walked through shadows, across fields of obsidian knives, through winds that cut like blades. He was tested again and again, but he persevered. Finally, he reached the place where the bones lay, ancient and silent, resting in the stillness of eternity. The Lord of Mictlan, Tezcatlipoca, and his wife, Tezcatlipoca, demanded that Quetzalcoatl prove his worth. He was given challenges, riddles, and dangers, yet with his wit and determination, he succeeded. At last, he gathered the bones, brittle and white, and placed them in a bundle to carry back to the world above. But the underworld was not ready to let them go so easily. As Quetzalcoatl made his way back, he stumbled into a trap. The bones spilled, shattering upon the ground, breaking into pieces. For a moment, it seemed all was lost. Yet Quetzalcoatl gathered them up, every fragment, every shard, and carried them back nonetheless. When he returned to the world of the living, he presented the bones to the gods. They crushed them into a fine powder, mixing them with sacred maize dough, and from this, with the blood of the gods themselves, humankind was formed. The people were shaped from maize and bone, from earth and sacrifice, from the strength of the past and the sustenance of the future. To the Aztecs, this was more than myth. It was truth. They saw themselves as children of maize, their bodies nourished by it, their lives dependent on its growth. Each kernel of corn was sacred, a reminder of their origin. To eat was not simply to take food, it was to receive the very gift of the gods, a gift born from struggle, sacrifice, and love. Imagine for a moment the golden fields of maize stretching across the valleys, the tall stalks swaying in the wind. To the Aztecs, these were not just plants, but living symbols, relatives, reminders that they were part of a cycle far greater than themselves. Each harvest was a renewal of life, a moment of gratitude, a quiet acknowledgement of their connection to creation. The story of Quetzalcoatl's journey to Mictlan also carried a gentle lesson. The bones were broken, yet from their fragments, new life emerged. The people were not perfect, not whole, but formed from the remains of what had come before. This taught the Aztecs humility, that humans are fragile, incomplete, yet still sacred. To be human was not to be flawless, but to live in balance with the gifts of the gods. Each time they ate maize, they remembered. Each time they planted seeds, they offered thanks. Each time they ground corn into dough for tortillas and tamales, they touched upon the very substance of their creation. Maize was food, but it was also memory, the living thread that tied them to their origins. Let the image linger in your mind, Quetzalcoatl descending into the shadows of Mictlan, carrying the bones of the ancestors upon his back. His stumble, his fall, the shattering of bones upon the earth. And then, from those fragments, the tender shaping of humankind, infused with maize, strengthened by the blood of the divine. A people born from resilience, from imperfection, and from the nourishment of the earth itself. The Aztecs honored maize in ritual and in daily life. They knew that without it, they would not survive, not only physically, but spiritually. It was the thread that bound them to the gods. To waste it was to dishonor their own beginnings. To share it was to participate in the cycle of giving that sustained the cosmos. As you rest with this story tonight, think of the simplicity and the depth of maize. A grain, small and golden, holding within it the memory of creation. In your own life, too, there may be simple things that carry great meaning, quiet reminders of who you are and where you have come from. The Aztecs believed that every meal was a small act of reverence. Every bite of maize was sacred, for it renewed the bond between the people and the divine. They were not separate from the earth that sustained them, they were made of it, woven into its very fabric. And so, in the stillness of the night, as you close your eyes, remember the gift of maize, the gift of life. Remember the journey of Quetzalcoatl, the bones of the past, the humble grain of corn, and the shaping of humanity from both. In this gentle myth, we find not only the origin of a people, but a timeless truth, that we are sustained by what came before, and we, too, are part of the cycle that nourishes what will come after. Let us drift further into the quiet of Aztec memory. Imagine long journeys across open plains, deserts, and valleys. The people we now call the Aztecs were once wanderers, seekers without a home. They carried with them not cities or wealth, but a vision, a promise whispered by their god, Huitzilopochtli, the hummingbird of the south, the sun that guided them on their path. Huitzilopochtli told them that they must wander until they found a sign. Not just any sign, but one marked in the language of the divine, an eagle, perched upon a cactus, devouring a serpent. It would not be an easy vision to find, but it would show them where to build their city, their heart, their destiny. And so, they walked. Step by step, year by year, they crossed landscapes filled with both hardship and wonder. They passed through lands already claimed by other peoples, sometimes welcomed, sometimes resisted. They carried their god upon their backs in a sacred bundle, a reminder that though they had no city, they were never without purpose. The people lived simply during these wandering years. They ate what they could gather, hunted what the land allowed, and rested beneath the open sky. The stars became their roof, the earth their bed, the winds their companions. Children grew into adults as the journey stretched on, and elders passed away, their memories carried forward by stories told around the fire. Through all this, Huitzilopochtli's voice urged them forward. "Do not stop," he whispered. "Your home awaits. You will know it when you see the sign." And so, with patience and endurance, they pressed on, through hunger, through fatigue, guided by faith in the vision. At last, after many years, they came to the Valley of Mexico. Before them spread the shimmering waters of Lake Texcoco, a vast body of water surrounded by mountains. At its center were small islands, marshy and difficult to reach, but alive with reeds, birds, and the reflections of the sky. There, upon one of those islands, the vision appeared. An eagle, fierce and radiant, perched upon a prickly pear cactus. In its talons, it held a serpent, and beneath the morning sun, it spread its wings wide, a living sign of divine will. The people stood in awe, for they knew at once that their long journey had ended. This was the place promised to them. This was the place where they would build their city. Imagine the stillness of that moment. The lake glistened around them, the eagle's cry echoed through the valley, and the people felt both the weight of their years of wandering and the joy of their arrival. Here, in this unlikely marshland, their destiny would unfold. The city they built was called Tenochtitlan, named after the cactus fruit, the Tenochtli, and it grew upon the waters like a flower rising from the lake. At first, the settlement was humble, a small island village connected by causeways, its houses made of reeds and mud. But over time, it blossomed into one of the greatest cities the world had ever seen, a place of temples, markets, canals, and palaces, a city that shimmered like a jewel upon the lake. The story of the eagle on the cactus became more than a founding myth. It was a symbol of survival, resilience, and divine purpose. For the Aztecs, it showed that hardship and wandering were not without meaning, they were steps along the path to destiny. The eagle was not simply a bird, the cactus not simply a plant, nor the serpent simply prey. Together, they formed a message written in the language of the cosmos, one that only faith and patience could reveal. Even today, the image endures. On the flag of Mexico, you can still see the eagle perched on the cactus with the serpent in its grasp. It is not just a national emblem, but the echo of an ancient promise, a quiet reminder of the journey that gave birth to a people and their city. To the Aztecs, Tenochtitlan was more than a place to live. It was sacred ground, chosen by the gods. Every stone laid, every temple raised, every canal carved into the lake was part of a larger story, the unfolding of the vision that had carried them across the years. Let the image rest gently in your mind, the eagle's wings spread against the blue sky, the cactus rising from the rocky ground of the island, the serpent grasped firmly, and the people kneeling in reverence as they beheld their sign. It is a scene both humble and powerful, a reminder that even the smallest details of nature can carry the voice of the divine. And so, the wandering ended. The people found their home, and their home became their empire. From Tenochtitlan, their influence would stretch far and wide, their culture would flourish, their myths would deepen, and their legacy would be carried forward in stone, song, and memory. But the heart of the story was always the same, the eagle on the cactus, the vision that turned wanderers into builders, dreamers into a people rooted in the land. As you drift into rest tonight, think of this journey. Think of the years of wandering, the patience required to wait for a sign, the trust placed in a promise unseen. Sometimes in life, too, we may wander, uncertain of our destination. Yet, like the Aztecs, we carry our vision within us. And when the time is right, the sign will appear, and we will know that we have found our place. The Aztecs believed that nothing in the world was random. The eagle, the cactus, the serpent, all were part of a pattern woven by the gods, a tapestry of meaning hidden in plain sight. To walk through the world with open eyes was to see the sacred in every rock, every tree, every bird in flight. In the stillness of a quiet night, the Aztecs often lifted their eyes to the sky and wondered about the life of the sun. For them, the glowing orb that rose each morning was not only a celestial body, but a sacred being engaged in an endless struggle. To the Aztecs, the sun was life itself, a divine warrior who required strength, devotion, and sacrifice to keep moving across the heavens. Without him, the world would fall into darkness, and the balance of all things would collapse. The story of the sun's struggle begins with the Aztec belief in the 5 suns, the idea that the world had been created and destroyed 4 times before, and that they were now living in the age of the 5th sun. Each era was marked by a different sun god, each with its own destiny. The gods of the past had been devoured, drowned, or destroyed, leaving behind ruined worlds that no longer existed. The 5th sun, Tonatiuh, was the current sun, blazing in the heavens. But unlike other myths where gods ruled effortlessly, Tonatiuh's existence was not guaranteed. He was fragile, vulnerable, always at risk of being extinguished if the balance of the universe shifted. This fragility gave rise to one of the most important themes in Aztec thought, the need to nourish the sun. To keep Tonatiuh moving through the sky, energy had to be given. The Aztecs believed that the sun fed on the essence of life itself, known as Quetzalcoatl, the precious blood and energy of living beings. Without offerings, the sun would weaken. Without sacrifices, the day would fade into eternal night. This belief was not meant to inspire fear alone, but a deep sense of duty. The people saw themselves as guardians of the cosmos, responsible for ensuring the continuation of life by feeding the sun. It was not just warriors or priests who felt this responsibility, but all members of society. Every act of devotion, every offering, even the simple burning of incense, was a way of supporting the sun in his daily battle. Imagine, if you will, the rising of the sun in an Aztec morning. The golden light spilled gently over the temples of Tenochtitlán, shimmering on the waters of the lake. To the people, this sight was not routine, it was a miracle renewed. It meant that the gods had accepted the offerings of the day before. It meant that the warriors' struggles and the prayers of the faithful had succeeded. The sun had risen once more, victorious in his journey. Yet, even in this victory, there was no guarantee of tomorrow. Each day was a renewal, a fragile promise that had to be kept through devotion. In the myths, the sun's journey across the sky was described as a battle. As he climbed to his peak at midday, he was strong, radiant, unstoppable. But as he descended toward the horizon, his strength waned. In the west, as darkness approached, the sun entered the underworld. Here, he faced danger, challenges, and enemies that threatened to snuff out his light forever. Only by enduring this nightly struggle could he rise again in the east, reborn with the dawn. The Aztecs personified this cycle as an eternal war. They believed the sun was locked in combat with the forces of darkness, particularly the star demons known as the Tzitzimime. These celestial beings lurked in the night sky, waiting for weakness, eager to devour the world if the sun ever failed. For this reason, eclipses were especially terrifying events. When the sun dimmed, even for a brief moment, the people feared that the Tzitzimime were winning, that the fifth sun was falling, and with it, the end of their world. But the sun's struggle was not his alone. It was shared by humanity. The Aztecs referred to themselves as the people of the sun, chosen to stand beside Tonatiuh in his war against darkness. Through rituals, offerings, and the valor of warriors, they gave him the energy he needed to continue. To them, every heart that beat, every drop of blood that flowed, was filled with sacred essence that connected humanity to the divine. By returning some of that essence to the gods, they maintained the cosmic balance. This sense of purpose infused their daily lives. When farmers planted maize, they offered the first kernels to the earth and sky, recognizing the sun's role in nurturing crops. When children were born, their parents gave thanks to Tonatiuh, asking for light and warmth to guide the child's path. Even in death, people believed their souls might join the sun's journey, especially if they had lived with honor and courage. Warriors held a special place in this relationship. To fight bravely was not simply a matter of politics or conquest, it was a sacred duty to capture energy for the sun. When they brought prisoners for sacrifice, they were not thought of as cruel, but as participants in the cosmic order, ensuring the cycle of life and light continued. In return, warriors who died in battle or on the sacrificial stone were believed to accompany the sun on his journey across the sky, transformed into radiant hummingbirds and butterflies that danced among the flowers. It is important to remember that this belief system was not rooted in despair but in reverence. To the Aztecs, the world was alive with divine energy, and the sun's struggle gave meaning to human existence. Every day was precious, every moment filled with the knowledge that life continued because of shared effort. Theirs was a worldview that bound together heaven and earth, gods and mortals, in a fragile but beautiful partnership. As night fell over Tenochtitlán, the people watched the glowing sun sink below the horizon. They knew he had entered the dangerous underworld, where shadows pressed close, and the Tzitzimime lurked. But they also trusted that their offerings would give him strength. In the darkness, they lit fires and candles, small flames to mirror the greater flame of the sun, guiding him through the perilous night. They whispered prayers, soft and steady, their voices carried upward like smoke into the stars. And then, in the stillness before dawn, when the first light appeared in the east, relief washed over the city. The fifth sun had survived once more. He rose above the horizon, golden and fierce, ready to begin his journey again. The people greeted him with song and gratitude, their hearts lifted by the promise of another day. The story of the sun's eternal struggle is more than myth, it is a reminder of the cycles of life, of the fragile balance between light and dark, of the effort required to keep the world alive. For the Aztecs, this tale was a quiet truth that shaped their days, a whisper of devotion carried on the morning breeze, and a comfort in the endless dance of time. Let us settle deeper into the quiet rhythm of this story. The Aztecs believed that the world we live in was not the first, but the fifth in a long sequence of creations and destructions. Each world, or sun, was ruled by different gods, and each ended in catastrophe before another began. These cycles were not merely stories but truths whispered through generations, shaping how the Aztecs understood time, destiny, and existence. Tonight, as we drift softly into their myths, let us journey through the four suns that came before our present age. The first world was known as the Sun of Jaguars. In this beginning, it was said that the gods created giants. These beings roamed the earth, larger and stronger than the humans who would come later. The giants lived upon the fruits of the land, wandering through forests that stretched endlessly and rivers that flowed freely. Yet, the gods were not satisfied. They found the giants clumsy, unable to honor the divine powers as they wished. So, the world came to an end. From the dark sky descended jaguars, fierce and terrible. They devoured the giants, leaving no trace of their kind. With that, the first sun was extinguished. The second world was called the Sun of Wind. This time, the gods fashioned humans once more, hoping for a more fitting creation. These people lived upon the earth and grew accustomed to their lives. But the god Quetzalcoatl, associated with the wind, grew restless. He unleashed mighty hurricanes that swept across the land, tearing down mountains, uprooting trees, and destroying everything in their path. The people were not destroyed entirely, but transformed. They became monkeys, swinging through the forests, their voices echoing as a reminder of that age. The gods saw again that their creation had failed to endure. The third world was the sun of fire and rain. In this age, it was Tlaloc, the god of rain, who held sway. People flourished for a time, but Tlaloc, though mighty, grew angered by human actions. Perhaps their prayers were not pleasing enough, or perhaps they had offended the gods in ways forgotten. His fury was terrible, and from the heavens, fire rained down upon the earth. Flames consumed fields and forests, and molten rock poured across the land. The people screamed and ran, but none could escape. Many were transformed into birds, flapping their wings toward the sky, while others were lost to the inferno. And so, the third sun perished in fire. The fourth world was called the Sun of Water. In this age, the people lived again in fragile harmony, but they could not escape the judgment of the gods. It was Quetzalcoatl, the goddess of rivers and seas, who reigned. Her heart was full of compassion, yet she too became angered, perhaps by the selfishness of humankind, or perhaps by the endless cycle of divine rivalry. She wept tears beyond measure, and those tears became a great flood that swallowed the world. Mountains sank beneath waves, temples crumbled, and the people were swept away. Many were transformed into fish, swimming beneath the waters. The fourth sun was drowned, leaving behind only whispers of what had been. Thus, 4 worlds had risen and fallen, each lasting centuries, perhaps millennia, in the grand cycles of time. Each ended with catastrophe, jaguars, hurricanes, fire, and floods. Yet, from these destructions came transformation. The Aztecs believed that the remnants of these lost ages lived on around them, in the monkeys of the forests, in the birds soaring through the skies, in the fish swimming through lakes, and even in the memory of the stars that twinkled above. After the collapse of the fourth sun, the world stood in darkness. The gods gathered at Teotihuacan, the sacred place where time itself begins. There, they debated what must be done. Without the sun, the world was cold and silent. No crops grew, no warmth lit the land. The gods decided that a new sun must be created, a fifth one to bring light to the people. Yet, this was no simple matter. For such a sun to exist, a god would need to sacrifice themselves, leaping into the sacred fire so their body could rise as the new celestial light. This moment of decision would give birth to the fifth sun, the age in which the Aztecs lived. But as they looked back upon the past suns, they saw reminders of fragility. Every world before theirs had ended. This knowledge shaped their sense of existence. They believed that their own age, too, was temporary, destined to end in a great earthquake. It was not a question of if, but when. And so, when the Aztecs honored the gods through rituals and offerings, they were not only giving thanks for the present but also striving to delay the inevitable end. Each prayer, each ceremony, was a plea for the fifth sun to continue shining a little longer. As you drift deeper into rest, picture those four lost worlds, each fading like a dream. Imagine the towering giants wandering under the first sun, only to vanish into the shadows of prowling jaguars. Picture the howling wind sweeping the earth, carrying people away until they clung to trees as monkeys. Envision the fiery sky raining molten stone, scattering humans who rose again as birds. And finally, see the endless flood, where humans swam as fish beneath the waves of the drowned earth. These tales are not only of destruction but of renewal. Each ending gave birth to something new, and each sun brought a different form of life. For the Aztecs, these cycles were reminders of resilience, of the endless weaving and unweaving of existence. Their myths taught them that though the world may tremble, life always finds a way to rise again. Now, as you rest, imagine yourself standing at Teotihuacan with the gods. The air is still, the night heavy with silence. A great fire burns at the center, waiting for one to step forward and leap. The destiny of the world hangs in the balance. Soon, a new sun will rise, and a new age will begin. But for now, let the story settle gently into your mind, like soft wine through ancient stone. Drift with the rhythm of these myths, and let the quietness carry you toward peace. Settle once more into the quiet rhythm of this story, breathing softly as the ancient world of the Aztecs unfolds before you. We have wandered through their myths of creation, their gods of night and sky, their legends of sacrifice and renewal. Now, in this chapter, we arrive at one of the most central beliefs of their people, the age of the fifth sun, a fragile world balanced on sacrifice, devotion, and cosmic order. The Aztecs believed that time itself was not eternal, but cyclical. Worlds had existed before, and worlds had ended, torn apart by fire, flood, beasts, or darkness. Each cycle, each sun, brought life, only for it to collapse under its own weight. They told of 4 previous ages, each destroyed in violence or chaos, and in their present time, they lived under the fifth sun. This was the world they knew, the world they cherished, and the world they feared might one day crumble, as all the others had. In hushed voices, priests spoke of the great gathering of gods at Teotihuacan, the sacred city of the sun and moon. There, the divine beings debated who would light the new age after the fourth sun had collapsed into darkness. 2 gods stepped forward, one proud and radiant, one humble and modest. Tezcatlipoca, the proud one, covered himself in fine feathers and jewels, while Nanahuatzin, the humble one, clothed himself only in simple paper and ashes. The fire blazed in the center of the sacred gathering. One by one, the gods urged Tezcatlipoca to leap in, to sacrifice himself, to become the new sun. But fear overcame him, and he faltered. Then, without hesitation, Nanahuatzin threw himself into the flames. His body blazed with light, and he rose into the sky as the fifth sun, the radiant force of the present world. Shamed, Tezcatlipoca followed, leaping into the fire as well, and he too became bright. But the gods would not allow 2 suns, and so they struck Tezcatlipoca's face with a rabbit, dimming his light, turning him into the pale moon. This was how the Aztecs understood their present age. They lived in the time of Nanahuatzin's gift, in the era of the fifth sun. Yet they believed the sun was not eternal, it required nourishment, and that nourishment came only from sacrifice. Without offerings, without devotion, the sun might grow weary, and the age might end, just as the 4 before it had. The people lived with this delicate awareness, a sense that the balance of the universe was fragile. Each sunrise was not guaranteed, but earned, through their prayers, their rituals, and the lifeblood offered to the heavens. It was not cruelty in their eyes, but reciprocity. The gods had given themselves so that humanity might live, and in return, humanity gave back what they could, their devotion, their hearts, their breath. Priests in towering temples told the people that each offering of sacrifice, each cut of obsidian, each drop of blood was a thread woven into the fabric of cosmic stability. To live under the fifth sun was both a blessing and a burden. The Aztecs knew they had been given the light of life, but they also carried the responsibility of keeping that light alive. At night, as the people gazed up at the stars, they remembered the fate of the earlier suns. They spoke of the first sun, when giants roamed the earth until they were devoured by jaguars. They recalled the second sun, when people were transformed into monkeys, scattered in chaos. The third sun was swept away by fire, its people turned into birds. The fourth sun drowned beneath floods, its inhabitants changed into fish. Each cycle was both creation and destruction, and the Aztecs lived with the knowledge that their own age too might one day be undone. This understanding shaped their daily lives. It filled their rituals with urgency, their ceremonies with gravity, and their festivals with reverence. When the priests cut open the chest of a sacrificial victim and lifted the heart to the sky, they were not seen as executioners, but as guardians of the balance, caretakers of the sun's journey. The people believed that the fiery heart, offered in devotion, became a spark that helped the sun rise again in the morning. Even beyond sacrifice, every act of devotion mattered. A prayer whispered at dawn, a child offering flowers to the gods, a family burning copal incense at the household altar, all these were gestures of gratitude, small but meaningful. The Aztecs believed that the fifth sun listened not only to blood, but also to breath, song, and prayer. And yet, in their calmest moments, some may have wondered how long this age would last. Would it be fire again, or flood, or beasts that ended the fifth sun? Or would it collapse in silence, the world fading without ceremony? These questions drifted quietly in the hearts of the people, but they trusted in their gods, in their rituals, and in the fragile but precious balance that sustained them. The Aztec world was filled with music and color, with flowers and poetry, even under the shadow of cosmic fear. Their songs did not speak only of doom, but of gratitude, for the sun that warmed their faces, for the maize that fed their families, for the rain that kissed the earth. Their understanding of fragility made them treasure beauty all the more. Every bloom, every sunrise, every breath was fleeting, and that made it sacred. As you breathe softly now, imagine standing in the great plaza of Tenochtitlan, the vast capital city, where the temples rose like mountains of stone. Hear the murmur of prayers, the flicker of fire, the steady beat of drums. Feel the awe of a people who believed their very existence depended on honoring the sun. The fifth sun shines brightly above you, but you know, deep within, that it requires your care, your gratitude, your devotion. And so the Aztecs lived, between fear and reverence, between burden and blessing. They walked each day with the knowledge that the balance of the world was delicate, and that their lives were part of a greater story, a cosmic cycle stretching across ages. In this awareness, they found meaning, and in their devotion, they found peace. Let your breath mirror theirs, steady and calm, aware of the fragility of existence, yet grateful for the beauty of each moment. For like them, we too live in a fragile world, uncertain of its future, but able to honor the present with gratitude. As the soft blanket of night falls upon the Valley of Mexico, the ancient Aztec storytellers would whisper of the forces that ruled the hours of darkness. For just as the day was guided by the sun, so too did the night have its guardians, its watchful powers, and its mysteries. These were known as the Lords of the Night, and each one presided over a single hour of the darkened world, shaping dreams, destinies, and the flow of unseen energies. The Aztecs believed that the night was not empty. Instead, it was alive with spirits, gods, and forces too subtle for human eyes. Every moment, as the stars shifted overhead, a different lord held sway, granting either protection or danger, peace or unease. To understand the night, one had to understand these guardians, for they ruled in turns until the first light of dawn returned. The first of the lords was Tezcatlipoca, the lord of fire, who glowed even in the darkest night. He was the eternal flame, the hidden ember that kept warmth alive when the world grew cold. In the deep silence, he represented endurance and survival, and many families would whisper his name when tending the hearth fire late at night, ensuring that their home remained protected from wandering spirits. Next came Tezcatlipoca, the smoking mirror, ever watchful and ever cunning. When he ruled the hour, the night was filled with mystery. Shadows seemed longer, dreams more vivid, and chance encounters more fateful. He was known as the Master of Destiny, and his presence reminded people that in the darkness, unseen paths were always being shaped. Then there was Huitzilopochtli, the youthful lord of dawnlight, who carried with him the promise that even in the depth of night, the light was waiting. He watched over dreams of renewal, healing, and guidance, and those who prayed during his hour hoped to wake refreshed, filled with new energy for the day to come. Another lord was Tenochtitlán, the maize god, who brought nourishment even in the shadows. His hour was gentle, filled with the comfort of dreams about fields of corn, about harvests and abundance. For the Aztecs, maize was life itself, and his watch over part of the night was a reassurance that life was always being sustained, even when the world seemed asleep. The night also belonged, in part, to Mictlan, the skeletal lord of the Underworld. His presence was colder, heavier, and those who felt restless at his hour often spoke of feeling a chill in their dreams. But the Aztecs did not fear him completely. To them, he was a necessary part of existence, reminding all that life and death were woven together, and that even the shadows carried meaning. Alongside him came Quetzalcoatl, the Lady of Jade Waters, guardian of lakes and streams. When she ruled the night, dreams often carried visions of flowing rivers or rainfall upon fertile earth. She brought coolness and calm, as if she was washing away the worries of the day. For those who lay awake, her hour was one of gentle sounds, the imagined ripple of water, the soft murmur of streams guiding them into rest. Another of the lords was Tezcatlipoca, the goddess of cleansing and transformation. Her hour was often one of release, where people confessed their worries to themselves in the stillness of night. The Aztecs believed she had the power to purify the soul, and so her time was seen as a chance to let go of mistakes, to unburden the heart, and to move forward lighter and freer. There was also Huitzilopochtli, the obsidian blade, sharp and shining in the starlight. He represented sacrifice and the cutting away of what no longer served. His hour could be unsettling, but also clarifying. Dreams beneath his watch might be vivid and strange, but they carried truth, guiding the dreamer toward understanding. He was a reminder that even in sleep, wisdom could be gained through clarity. One of the most respected of the lords was Tlaloc, the rain god, who also shared part of the night. His presence was mighty and nourishing, for his rains brought crops to life and kept rivers flowing. During his hour, many believed they could hear distant thunder or feel the softness of rain in their dreams, as if his voice was speaking directly through the night sky. Finally, there was Tenochtitlán, the sun, whose influence even touched the night. He reminded all that dawn would come, that the circle of time would never break. His hour was filled with anticipation, when dreams seemed to brighten, as if preparing the sleeper for awakening. Together, these lords of the night ruled in harmony, each with a turn to shape the hours. To the Aztecs, this cycle was not merely superstition, it was a way of understanding the balance of the cosmos. Darkness was not simply absence, but a space filled with power and meaning. To sleep was to travel through these realms, guided hour by hour until the light of morning. Imagine yourself, now, drifting beneath this ancient sky. The stars shimmer softly above, and as the hours pass, you are carried gently from one lord's care to the next. First warmed by the quiet fire, then wrapped in mystery, then touched by the promise of dawn, until at last you find yourself embraced by the coming sunrise. The lords of the night were not only guardians of time, but also keepers of peace. For the Aztecs, to fall asleep was not to be lost in silence, but to journey through a sacred rhythm, always guided, always protected, until day returned again. And so, in their stories, the night was never lonely. It was always full of presence, full of guidance, full of gentle watching spirits. To lie beneath that vast sky was to be part of something eternal, something both mysterious and comforting. And as we breathe softly, imagining their watchful presence, we too can let go of the day, and surrender to the flow of the night's gentle guardians. Rest for a moment, breathe gently, and imagine once more that you are walking through the calm heart of Tenochtitlan. The city is quiet in the early dawn, but soon, a new day will begin. The mists part slowly as the sun begins to rise. And with it, the people whisper the name of the one who carries the world on his golden shoulders, Tonatiuh, the radiant sun god. In the Aztec world, the sun was not just a ball of light in the sky. It was a living being, fierce yet generous, warm yet demanding. The Aztecs believed that Tonatiuh needed strength to move across the heavens each day. Without nourishment, without devotion, he might weaken, and the world might slip into darkness. So they watched the sun with reverence, and with careful devotion, knowing that their very lives depended on his journey. As we sit quietly, picture the rising sun as the Aztecs saw it, a fiery disk, painted with rays of gold and red, stretching over the great lakes and mountains. It was Tonatiuh's face, shining down upon his children. His eyes burned with determination, but there was also weariness, for his path across the sky was long. Every day, he rose from the east, traveled the dome of the sky, and descended into the underworld, where battles with darkness awaited him. And every day, he returned, carrying victory, bringing warmth and light back to the world. The stories say that Tonatiuh was not the first sun. Before him, there were other suns, other ages, each one collapsing in chaos. The Aztecs believed that we live in the fifth sun, an age born of both sacrifice and courage. And Tonatiuh, the fifth sun, was chosen to shine after others had fallen. Yet his light, too, could fail if he were not given strength. This is why the people gathered in temples, why they prayed, and why rituals filled their days, to keep the sun alive. Imagine yourself at the great Templo Mayor as the dawn breaks. Drums beat softly, echoing like a heartbeat. Priests lift their voices in chants, speaking to Tonatiuh. They hold aloft flowers and cacao, burning incense that swirls gently into the air. The people gather, offering their quiet hopes. Even as the city stirs with movement, there is a stillness, as though every soul holds its breath, waiting for the sun to fully rise. When Tonatiuh's face clears the horizon, relief spreads like warmth over the land. The god has risen again. The day has begun. But Tonatiuh was not a distant god. He was thought of as a warrior. His journey across the sky was not peaceful, it was a battle. Every day, he fought the forces of darkness. He carried a shield of fire and a spear of light, defending the world from the shadows that sought to devour it. His greatest enemies were the stars and the moon, who gathered in armies to chase him. But the people believed that through their devotion, through the offerings they gave, Tonatiuh gained the strength to fight them off. At dusk, when he descended into the underworld, the people knew that his struggle was at its fiercest. Night was dangerous, uncertain. Would Tonatiuh find his way back? Would he overcome the monsters that lurked in the deep? Each sunrise was proof of his victory. Each dawn was a promise that life would continue. And so, every morning, gratitude filled the Aztec world. The survival of the universe depended on this endless cycle. Now, let us soften our minds and picture Tonatiuh not as a fearsome warrior, but as a gentle presence in our story. Imagine him walking across the sky as a kind guardian, scattering light like golden feathers. His rays warmed the soil, coaxing maize to grow, ripening the fruits, nourishing the people. His warmth touches the lakes, sending glitter across the water. He gives life to the birds, who sing in his light, and to the flowers, who open their petals in his glow. The world blossoms beneath his gaze, and though his strength is mighty, his gift is gentle. In Aztec poetry, the sun is often described as a dancer. His movements across the sky are like steps in an eternal performance. Some verses describe the sun as draped in feathers, shining with jewels, moving to the music of flutes and drums. The dance is both beautiful and demanding, for it never ends. Tonatiuh cannot rest, for the world depends on him. But he dances still, joyfully, carrying the rhythm of life with him. The Aztecs saw themselves as partners in this cosmic dance. Through their songs, their offerings, and their devotion, they joined Tonatiuh's journey. They sang to him in the morning, praised him at noon, and sent their prayers with him into the evening. Each human act of kindness, each gesture of respect, was another step in harmony with the sun. Now, close your eyes and picture yourself standing at the edge of Lake Texcoco. The water ripples softly. The sun has reached its peak in the sky, and the world is bathed in golden light. You feel the warmth on your face, the quiet peace that comes from knowing the sun watches over you. The sound of distant flutes carries across the air, soft and soothing. Perhaps it is a song to Tonatiuh, a prayer woven in music, a promise that the people will walk beside him in his journey. As the day drifts on, shadows grow longer. The sun lowers gently, painting the sky with orange and crimson. The city grows still once more. People pause in their work to watch Tonatiuh sink beyond the horizon. Some whisper words of encouragement, some bow their heads in silence. For they know he is entering the underworld, where his courage will be tested. Night will come, stars will fill the sky, but faith tells them he will return again. And so, the cycle continues, an endless story, a circle of light and shadow. The Aztecs found comfort in this rhythm, just as we find comfort in our own cycles, morning, afternoon, night, and morning again. The world may change, but the sun remains constant, a companion across time. Let the warmth of Tonatiuh's light stay with you now, a reminder of resilience and renewal. Each day is a new journey, a new chance to rise, a new chance to dance with the world. As we close this chapter, feel the calmness of the sun's embrace, and carry its quiet strength into your dreams. Close your eyes for a moment, and imagine a stone disk, vast and perfectly carved, resting in the heart of an ancient city. The sunlight falls gently across its surface, highlighting symbols of suns, moons, animals, and mysterious figures. This is not just art. It is not merely decoration. It is a map of time itself. For the Aztecs, time was alive, and it was woven into the very fabric of their mythology. Tonight, we explore the sacred calendar, the heartbeat of their world. The Aztec people followed two great calendars, each with its own rhythm. The first was called the Tonalpwali, meaning the count of days. It was a 260-day cycle, sacred and mysterious, tied deeply to divination and spiritual balance. The second was the Xiapawali, a solar calendar of 365 days, which followed the movements of the sun and the seasons. When woven together, these two calendars created a cycle of 52 years, a sacred century, after which the Aztecs believed the world might end and be reborn again. Imagine how it must have felt to live in a world where every single day carried not just a name, but also a personality, a power, and a destiny. In the Tonalpwali, days were named after animals, elements, and forces of nature. You might be born on the day of the jaguar, strong and fierce. Or perhaps on the day of the rabbit, playful yet clever. The priests, the Tonalpuk, were the ones who read these signs. They studied the calendar to guide marriages, wars, harvests, and even the births of children. It was said that no action could be taken without consulting the calendar first. If one wished to begin building a home, the day had to be favorable. If a child was to be named, the signs of their birth date were considered carefully, for they shaped the soul's journey. The calendar was, in truth, a mirror of the cosmos. The Xiapawali, the solar calendar, was more familiar to us today. It measured the farming year, divided into 18 months of 20 days each, with 5 extra, empty days, at the end. These empty days, known as the Nemontemi, were thought to be unlucky, dangerous even. People avoided traveling, avoided beginning new tasks, and instead stayed close to their families, offering quiet prayers to the gods. In this way, time itself was not neutral for the Aztecs. It was alive. Each moment was infused with divine meaning. To walk through life was to walk upon a sacred path of days, and to stray from this rhythm was to invite chaos. The Great Sun Stone, sometimes mistakenly called the Aztec calendar, was a magnificent expression of this cosmic order. At its center lies the face of Tenochtitlán, the sun god, his tongue shaped as a sacrificial blade, reminding all who looked upon it of the sacred duty to nourish the sun with offerings. Around him are the four previous eras, or suns, each destroyed in cataclysm. One by jaguars, another by wind, another by fiery rain, and another by flood. These were reminders that time was fragile, and that the universe was always on the edge of renewal or destruction. For the Aztecs, the calendar was not only about measuring days. It was about keeping the universe in balance. Time was sacred because it was tied to the gods themselves. The cycle of planting, growing, and harvesting maize was more than farming, it was a reenactment of the gods' gifts. The 52-year cycle carried with it both hope and dread, for when the two calendars aligned, the Aztecs believed the world might come to an end unless they acted to sustain it. It was during this moment that the great new fire ceremony was held. Picture this, the last night of the 52-year cycle. Every fire across the Aztec world was extinguished. Cities and villages, usually glowing with hearths and torches, fell into darkness. Families huddled together, holding their breath, waiting for dawn. The priests climbed the hill of the star, near the great city, carrying the tools of sacrifice. A prisoner was laid upon the altar, and as the Pleiades reached their highest point in the night sky, the fire was kindled within his chest. If the flame caught, it meant the world would continue. From that sacred fire, runners carried torches back to every city and village, rekindling the hearts of the people, giving them hope for another cycle of life. The calendar was a reminder that humans and gods were partners in the dance of creation. The gods had given their lives to create the sun and the moon, to bring maize to the people, and to keep the world alive. In return, humans had to honor time, to respect the sacred rhythm, and to offer back their prayers, their sacrifices, and their devotion. Even today, when we look upon the great sun stone preserved in Mexico City, we can feel some of that power. Its carvings are not just ancient art, but echoes of a worldview in which time itself was sacred, living, and divine. It whispers to us that life is part of a cycle, and that every moment, no matter how small, carries a meaning within the vast cosmos. So as you drift toward sleep, imagine that you are lying beneath the Aztec sky. The stars move slowly above you, and the moon casts her gentle light. In the distance, you hear the quiet beating of a drum, marking the rhythm of time. Each beat is a day. Each pause, a night. You are part of the great calendar, part of the cycle of suns, part of the dance that has no true end. The Aztecs did not simply count days, they listened to them, spoke with them, and lived within their rhythm. And perhaps, as you let go of your thoughts tonight, you can feel a little of that rhythm too, the steady pulse of time, guiding you gently into rest. Let us return now to one of the most beloved and fascinating figures of Aztec mythology. Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent. His name has drifted softly through our earlier stories, like a gentle breeze carrying the scent of blooming flowers. He was the god of wind, of learning, of artistry, and of life itself. And in this chapter, we linger with him a while longer, tracing the tender legend of his departure and the whispered hope of his return. Close your eyes, if you wish, and imagine him, a serpent, long and powerful, but not menacing. His scales shimmer like emeralds, feathers unfurling like those of the quetzal bird, brilliant green against the blue sky. He glides not across the ground, but through the heavens, a symbol of earth and sky woven together. In him is both wisdom and kindness, and so many hearts turn to him with love. The Aztecs told stories of Quetzalcoatl's reign upon the earth. He was said to have lived among men, teaching them the arts that made life beautiful. He gave them the gift of maize, corn, the golden grain that sustained their bodies. He taught them the calendar, so that the rhythms of the sun and stars could guide planting and harvest. He taught the art of painting and writing, so memories could be preserved. He was a gentle god, favoring offerings of flowers and butterflies over blood. But the world of the gods is never still, never free from conflict. There was another god, Tezcatlipoca, whom we have met before. He was the smoking mirror, the trickster, the one who delights in shadows. He saw the love that humans gave to Quetzalcoatl, and his heart filled with envy. Where Quetzalcoatl nurtured, Tezcatlipoca tested. Where Quetzalcoatl gave freely, Tezcatlipoca deceived. And so, he sought to bring about the feathered serpent's fall. The stories say that Tezcatlipoca conjured a mirror of obsidian, dark and gleaming. He showed it to Quetzalcoatl, and in it, the god saw his own face, lined, weary, aged. Though he was a deity, he suddenly felt the burden of mortality. Tezcatlipoca then offered him pulque, a drink made from the maguey plant, fermented and intoxicating. Quetzalcoatl, perhaps in sorrow, perhaps in weariness, drank. His heart, once so steady, faltered under the influence. He stumbled, and in his drunkenness, he broke his own code of purity. Ashamed, he could no longer remain. He built for himself a raft, not of wood, but of serpents, who coiled together to bear him across the eastern sea. The wind carried him, and he drifted away from the land he had cherished. Some say he journeyed to the east, to lands unknown. Others say he leapt into a blazing fire, and from the flames his heart rose into the sky, becoming the morning star, Venus. But though he was gone, he left behind a promise. One day, he would return. The winds would shift, and the feathered serpent would rise again, bringing with him a new age of renewal and peace. His followers held on to this hope like a dream, whispering it from parent to child, from elder to youth. This prophecy of return lingered for centuries. When the Spanish ships first appeared on the horizon in the 16th century, some believed that Quetzalcoatl had come back, as promised. The pale-skinned strangers, arriving from the east just as the stories foretold, seemed to fit the image. This misunderstanding would become part of the tragic story of conquest, though it was born from the quiet yearning for a god who had once walked among them. But let us not rush ahead to history. Let us remain here, in the timeless space of myth. Picture Quetzalcoatl sailing eastward, the serpents beneath him gliding across the water like oars. Imagine the light of dawn spilling over the waves, painting the sea in hues of gold and pink. He does not vanish in despair, but in dignity, carrying with him the promise of his return. His feathers ripple in the wind, his emerald eyes shining with sorrow but also with hope. The Aztecs cherished him not only as a god but as an ideal. He was wisdom, artistry, and renewal embodied. To live in harmony with his teachings was to live gently with the world, to honor beauty and learning, to find peace in the gifts of nature. Even in his absence, his presence was felt, in the wind that brushed the fields of maize, in the morning star that rose faithfully above the horizon. And so, when the people of Tenochtitlan looked to the east and saw Venus in the dawn sky, they remembered him. He has not abandoned us, they whispered. He will return, when the time is right. This story is both tender and bittersweet, a reminder of how deeply myth shapes the human heart. For it is not just the figure of Quetzalcoatl we see here, but the yearning of people for guidance, for wisdom, for a leader who brings light instead of fear. In him lived the dream of a better world, one ruled by kindness rather than cruelty, one nourished by beauty rather than war. As we let this story rest upon us, like a soft blanket, we can feel its gentle rhythm slow our own breathing. The feathered serpent sails eastward still, across seas of imagination, across the tides of time. And each dawn, when the morning star glimmers faintly in the sky, we may think of him, returning, watching, promising. So tonight, as you rest, let Quetzalcoatl's story soothe you. Let his feathers drift around you, soft and bright, like the dreams that carry you into sleep. Remember that even when he departed, he left behind not despair, but hope. And perhaps, in your dreams, you may see him return, not with conquest or fear, but with gentle laughter, with wisdom shared, with gifts of peace. The feathered serpent's tale is not one of endings, but of waiting, of trusting that renewal always comes. And so, in the quiet of night, his legend continues, carried by the wind, whispered by the stars, and alive in the soft beating of your heart. Time, for the Aztecs, was not simply a measure of passing days. It was a living cycle, a force with spirit and intention, an endless dance of beginnings and endings. Every sunrise was more than light upon the earth, it was proof that the cosmic balance had been maintained for yet another day. The people lived within a world where time itself was sacred, woven with patterns, symbols, and divine will. The Aztecs followed two great calendars, each moving like gears in a cosmic machine. The first was the Tonalpwali, the sacred calendar of 260 days. It was divided into periods of 13 days, called Tresinas, each ruled by a god or goddess, each carrying its own meaning. To the Aztecs, no day was ordinary. Every date was charged with significance, carrying energies that could shape destiny. A child's birth date foretold their path in life, their strengths, their challenges, even their likely fate. Priests studied these sacred cycles carefully, watching how the signs aligned, interpreting the will of the gods. The second was the Xiapawali, the solar calendar of 365 days, reflecting the agricultural cycle, the turning of the seasons, and the rhythm of planting and harvest. Divided into 18 months of 20 days, with 5 days left over at the end, it guided the people's daily life. Each month carried its own rituals, feasts, and observances, from planting maize to honoring rain gods, from celebrating warriors to giving thanks for the earth's fertility. The last 5 days of the solar year were the Nemontemi, the empty days. They were seen as dangerous, uncertain, times when the boundary between order and chaos was thin. People avoided travel, quarrels, or important decisions. They stayed close to home, offering prayers and waiting for the renewal of the cycle. Only when the new year began, with fire ceremonies and offerings, did a sense of safety return. When these two calendars, sacred and solar, turned together, they formed a great cycle of 52 years, called the calendar round. To the Aztecs, this was more than a count of time, it was the heartbeat of the universe. Each time the round was completed, the people feared that the world might end, for the gods might decide not to grant another cycle of years. Thus, every 52 years, the entire empire paused for the new fire ceremony, one of the most important rituals of all. As the last day of the cycle approached, all fires throughout the land were extinguished. Darkness spread across Tenochtitlan. Families sat in silence, their hearths cold, their torches snuffed out, their homes empty of light. Fear settled over the city, for no one knew if the sun would rise again. Priests climbed sacred hills, carrying wood and sacred tools. At the appointed moment, as the stars aligned, they cut into the chest of a sacrificial victim and lit a new fire within. The flame, born from sacrifice, was carried down to relight the temples, the palaces, and finally the hearths of every household. With fire came relief, joy, and renewal, the people had been granted another cycle of years. This ritual symbolized the fragility of existence. The world was never guaranteed. It continued only because the people gave, and the gods, in turn, allowed the sun to rise. Life was always a partnership, an exchange of offerings, a balance between mortal and divine. Time itself was personified in the god Tezcatlipoca, lord of fire and of the year. He was the warmth of the hearth, the guardian of renewal, the steady flame that carried existence forward. To honor him was to honor the flow of time, the passing of seasons, and the endless cycles of rebirth. The calendar was not only for priests or kings, it was the rhythm of everyone's life. Farmers looked to it to know when to plant and harvest. Mothers and fathers sought guidance for their children's futures. Warriors consulted it for auspicious days to march into battle. Merchants used it to choose the best times for journeys or trade. Time touched every soul, weaving the people together in shared rhythm. The beauty of the Aztec understanding of time lay in its sense of repetition. To them, history did not march forward in a straight line, it turned in circles, spiraling endlessly, with each cycle echoing the last. Just as the sun rose and set, so too did civilizations rise and fall, gods sacrifice themselves and be reborn, humans live and return to the earth. Every cycle brought both endings and beginnings. To listen to the heartbeat of the Aztec calendar was to feel a deep calm, the assurance that even in endings, renewal waits, that even in the quiet dark of the Nemontemi, light will return. It was a way of living attuned to patterns greater than oneself, a way of resting within the turning of the cosmos. As night fell over Tenochtitlan, one could imagine the people looking to the stars, seeing in their movements the signs of the gods. The calendars guided not only daily tasks but the very spirit of existence. In the whisper of the wind, in the flow of rivers, in the dance of flames, the people felt time moving, sacred and alive. And so they lived within its embrace, trusting in its rhythm, surrendering to its cycles, finding peace in the eternal return. Let us move now into one of the most curious and misunderstood parts of Aztec history and mythology, the Flowery Wars, known as Tezcatlipoca. The name itself might sound gentle, almost poetic, yet beneath it was a ritualized practice of conflict, steeped in deep meaning, tradition, and cosmic symbolism. To the Aztec mind, this was not mere battle, it was ceremony, a continuation of their dialogue with the gods, carried out upon the earth. Picture the wide expanse of the Valley of Mexico. Morning mist lingers above the distant volcanoes. The banners of different city-states ripple in the cool wind. The warriors prepare not with anger or greed, but with solemnity. Their painted faces shine with ritual pigments, their armor decorated with feathers. Each step toward the battlefield is taken with a sense of purpose. They are not just men preparing for war, they are actors in a divine play, ensuring that the cycle of life, death, and renewal continues without pause. The Aztecs believed that the gods required human hearts and blood, offerings of life, to keep the sun strong and the cosmos balanced. But instead of constant conquest, there arose the Flowery Wars, a formalized agreement between the Aztecs and rival city-states, particularly Tlaxcala, Huitzilopochtli, and Cholula. These battles were not meant for territorial gain or destruction of cities. They were arranged encounters, opportunities to capture rather than kill, moments to seize warriors alive so they might be honored in sacrifice to the gods. It may sound unusual to us today, but to the Aztecs, these wars were sacred. They were not viewed as senseless bloodshed, but as offerings wrapped in courage and beauty. Even the word flowery reminds us of this. Flowers were symbols of life, of fleeting beauty, of fragility and glory. To fight bravely, to adorn oneself in feathers and flowers, to become a captured warrior destined for sacrifice. This was considered an honorable fate, a pathway to transformation. Imagine the field. Brightly feathered shields clash against one another. Wooden swords edged with sharp obsidian gleam beneath the sun. The air hums with the sounds of conch shells and drums, instruments that remind everyone that this battle is as much a ritual as it is combat. Warriors are trained not to kill outright, but to disable, to strike in ways that will allow them to seize their opponent alive. Every movement is measured, graceful, almost like a dance. The enemy is not hated but respected, for he too is a participant in the divine design. Among the Aztecs, capturing a warrior alive was a greater achievement than taking a life. To bring back captives for sacrifice elevated a soldier's prestige, brought honor to his family, and strengthened the cosmic bond with the gods. The captives themselves often accepted their role with dignity, for to die as an offering was to ascend, to become part of the radiant energy that sustained the universe. The Flowery Wars were also practical. The Aztec Empire needed a steady flow of sacrificial victims to fulfill their religious duties, and the population of willing volunteers was never enough. These ritualized battles provided a continuous means of supplying those lives while maintaining political relationships with rival states. Tlaxcala, for example, remained unconquered by the Aztecs, yet engaged in these flowery wars for generations. There was rivalry, yes, but also cooperation in maintaining this cycle of sacred conflict. Now let us pause for a moment and think about the paradox. War, to us, is often destruction, chaos, loss. But to the Aztecs, these ceremonial wars were a way of preserving life. By ensuring the gods were nourished, they believed the sun would continue to rise, the crops would grow, and the rains would fall. The spilling of blood was not random violence, it was an exchange, a gift that kept existence itself in motion. In the quiet of the evening, after the battle, when the drums had stilled and the fires burned low, warriors and captives alike would be brought back to the cities. There, rituals unfolded. Songs would be sung, flowers and feathers would be arranged, and incense would rise into the night sky. Those who were to be sacrificed were not shamed but honored. They had become vessels of cosmic renewal, participants in the eternal dance between gods and mortals. The flowery wars remind us that the Aztec worldview cannot be easily compared to our own. For them, beauty and death were intertwined, inseparable. Life itself was fleeting, like a flower blooming for a brief moment before it withers. To embrace this truth was to live fully, courageously, and with acceptance of the inevitable. As you rest and listen, think of the lessons carried in these tales. The Aztecs remind us that every life is part of a greater pattern, that even struggle can have meaning, and that beauty can be found even in the most unlikely places. The flowery wars were not only battles of warriors, they were battles of spirit, reminders of the delicate threads that hold the cosmos together. Close your eyes now, and picture once more the field of ritual battle. See the bright flowers adorning shields, the shimmering obsidian blades, the feathers glistening under the sun. Hear the low thrum of the drum, steady and calm, like a heartbeat echoing across the earth. Everything is in balance, everything in motion, everything part of a cycle that never ends. And with this thought, let yourself drift deeper into quietness, carried gently by the knowledge that even in conflict, there can be harmony, and even in endings, there can be beginnings. Close your eyes once more, dear listener, and breathe deeply. We continue our quiet journey through the stories of the Aztec world. Tonight, let us listen to the soft tale of the feathered serpent, the noble Quetzalcoatl, and the gentle breath of the wind that always followed him. This story is not one of loud battles or fiery wars, but instead of wisdom, kindness, and the enduring gift of breath itself. The Aztecs spoke of Quetzalcoatl as a god unlike any other. His very name meant, the feathered serpent, a creature that joined heaven and earth, sky and soil, bird and snake, spirit and flesh. He was a teacher, a creator, and a bringer of life. Yet in this chapter, we will focus on one gentle aspect of his being, the god of the wind, Quetzalcoatl, who carried air across the world with a whispering calm. Imagine him for a moment, his long serpent body shining with brilliant feathers, shimmering in green and blue. When he stretched, the air shifted. When he breathed, clouds moved across the sky. And when he whispered, the trees bent and rustled as if they were listening to secrets. The Aztecs said that Quetzalcoatl made it possible for the sun to move across the heavens. Without the breath of the wind, the world would stay silent and still. With the wind, however, the world came alive, the flames burned, the seeds spread, the birds soared, and the rivers carried their song. One of the quiet stories told about Quetzalcoatl was of his arrival among people not as a god of thunder or fire, but as a gentle visitor. It is said that he would wear a mask with a pointed beak, shaped like that of a bird. When he blew through it, the sound was like the wind itself, soft, sighing, eternal. He came not to rule through force, but to teach through kindness. Picture the ancient city, with its stone temples and plazas. The people gather as they feel a breeze move through the warm air. It is not just any breeze. It is Quetzalcoatl's breath, reminding them that even the unseen has power. Farmers look to him with gratitude, for without the wind their corn would not spread its pollen, and their fields would not grow. Sailors on the Great Lakes whispered prayers to him before they set their canoes upon the waters, trusting his winds to guide them safely. The Aztecs told how Quetzalcoatl once helped set the sun and moon into motion. In the earliest days of the fifth sun, when the world was still new, the sun had risen but would not move. The sky was bright, but frozen in stillness. Life itself seemed trapped in silence. The gods gathered in concern. How could the world continue if the sun stood still? It was Quetzalcoatl, in his wind form, who offered the solution. He stepped forward and, with a deep breath, blew upon the sun. Slowly, gently, the great star began to move across the sky. The day had begun. The world, once silent, was filled with rhythm. Each morning and evening, his breath carried the sun on its endless journey, ensuring that night and day would forever follow each other in balance. But Quetzalcoatl was more than a guide of celestial bodies, he was a gentle teacher of humans as well. He gave them corn, taught them how to grind it, and how to make tortillas that could sustain them. He offered them wisdom in crafts, knowledge of writing, and guidance in rituals that honored the gods without cruelty. Unlike some deities who demanded blood in torrents, Quetzalcoatl valued gentleness. His offerings were often flowers, butterflies, and songs, things of beauty that drifted lightly on the air, like the wind itself. Yet, as with many stories in Aztec mythology, there is also sorrow. For Quetzalcoatl, despite his kindness, faced jealousy and betrayal. Tezcatlipoca, the smoky mirror god, who thrived on chaos and trickery, sought to undo him. In some tellings, he tricked Quetzalcoatl into shame, leading him to exile himself from the great city of Tula. Wrapped in sadness, the feathered serpent left, walking toward the eastern sea. But even in his departure, he promised he would return one day, carried by the wind, to bring balance again. The people of the valleys never forgot that promise. Whenever the winds blew strongly from the east, some would whisper that Quetzalcoatl's return was near. They imagined him sailing on the waves, his feathers glistening like emeralds in the sunlight, the breath of the world guiding him back home. In a bedtime way, this story reminds us of the unseen things in our own lives. We cannot see the wind, but we feel its touch on our faces, we hear it in the rustling of the leaves, we notice it in the way the clouds drift across the sky. Just as the Aztecs believed Tezcatl's wind gave life to the sun and growth to the earth, so too do we rely on the gentle things we cannot see. The quiet kindness of others, the breath we take with each moment of calm, the unseen forces of love and care. Close your eyes, if you haven't already, and imagine standing in an ancient valley. The sun is warm above you, the mountains rise in the distance, and the air carries the sound of unseen music. A breeze brushes against your cheek, cool and light. That is Quetzalcoatl's gift, the reminder that life moves gently forward, carried by breaths, carried by winds, carried by time. The Aztecs would sometimes place offerings for Tezcatl in circular temples, built not with sharp corners but with smooth, round edges. Why? Because the wind moves easily in circles, flowing without obstruction. These temples were built to welcome him, to let his presence flow freely, reminding the people that life, too, should move with ease and harmony. And so, as we bring this quiet tale to a close, remember the lessons of the feathered prince. Power does not always roar like thunder, sometimes it sighs like the wind. Strength is not always found in fire or stone, sometimes it is in breath, in patience, in the gentle hand that guides instead of commands. Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, still whispers in the world today. Each breeze you feel is a reminder of him, a reminder of balance, of kindness, of life itself. May his wind guide you into sleep, carrying you softly, like a leaf drifting on the air, into the calm of your dreams. In the quiet hush of night, when the stars shimmer softly across the velvet sky, the Aztec world once filled with the padded steps of the jaguar. To the people of Tenochtitlan, the jaguar was more than a creature of the forests and mountains. It was a living symbol of strength, stealth, and sacred mystery. The jaguar was the embodiment of the night itself, a predator who could slip into darkness unseen, a guardian of the realm between this world and the unseen one. And within Aztec society, the jaguar became not just a symbol, but an ideal to which warriors aspired. The jaguar warriors were among the most honored elite fighters of the Aztec Empire. Clad in costumes that resembled the spotted skin of the great beast, they painted their faces with black and gold, their eyes fierce, yet calm, like the creature they represented. These men were more than soldiers. They were guardians of the empire, chosen to embody the courage and cunning of the jaguar. To become a jaguar warrior was no simple task. It was not enough to fight bravely in battle. One had to capture enemies alive, returning them to Tenochtitlán for ritual offerings to the gods. Only through proving one's skill, patience, and mastery in the art of combat could one ascend to this honored rank. In this way, the warriors lived as the jaguar lived, not by rushing into danger recklessly, but by moving with care, cunning, and precision. At dusk, as the city quieted, and the evening mists curled around the great temples, these warriors would gather. Their garments, adorned with jaguar pelts, gave them the appearance of the great cat prowling through the night. For the Aztecs believed that the jaguar's spirit was tied to Tezcatlipoca, the powerful god of night, magic, and fate. When a warrior donned the jaguar's skin, he was no longer simply a man, he was a vessel of divine strength, a moving shadow of Tezcatlipoca himself. Legends tell of how the jaguar warriors carried with them not just physical power, but also spiritual courage. They were the ones who ventured bravely into the darkest corners of battlefields, where fear made other men falter. They were trained not only to fight with the Huitzilopochtli, the obsidian-bladed sword of the Aztecs, but also to move in silence, like the stalking predator. Every motion was deliberate, every step was measured, and every strike carried the weight of discipline and devotion. But their strength was not theirs alone. It was believed that the jaguar spirit dwelled within them, guiding them through danger, whispering in silence, and lending them the energy of the night. In this way, the warriors themselves became mythic figures. When they moved across the battlefield, it was as though the gods themselves had sent shadows to defend their people. Outside the realm of war, the jaguar warriors also held a place in the ceremonial life of the Aztecs. During rituals, they danced in skins patterned with spots, their movements imitating the grace of the cat. Their voices echoed in chants and songs, rising in praise to the gods of war and night. They were not only fighters, but also sacred performers, embodying the eternal balance between light and darkness. For the Aztec people, the jaguar represented power that lay hidden in mystery. By day, the eagle soared above, strong in the light of Tonatiuh, the sun. By night, the jaguar ruled, stalking silently beneath the moon. Together, eagle and jaguar were paired as symbols of balance, the duality of sky and earth, of sun and night. Eagle warriors fought with the brilliance of the day, while jaguar warriors fought with the silence of the night. Both were needed, and both were honored. In bedtime tales, parents told their children of the jaguar's might. They whispered stories of how the jaguar's roar could shake the heart of even the bravest enemy, yet its movements were so quiet that it could pass by without a single sound. The children, their eyes heavy with sleep, would dream of prowling through forests as the jaguar did, strong, fearless, and at one with the shadows. There is one story, soft as the wind through the reeds, about a young boy who longed to become a jaguar warrior. His name has long since been forgotten, but his spirit remains in the tale. He would walk at the edge of the forest, watching the great cats from a distance. He admired their strength but understood their patience. One night, as he wandered alone under the starlight, a jaguar appeared before him. Its golden eyes gleamed, and its spotted coat shimmered under the moonlight. Instead of attacking, the jaguar walked beside him, leading him deeper into the forest. The boy followed without fear, for he felt the presence of the gods in this encounter. The jaguar brought him to a clearing where the shadows seemed alive, and there, in the silence, the boy felt a power awaken within him. From that moment on, he carried the spirit of the jaguar in his heart. When he grew older, he became a warrior, his movements guided by that same spirit. His story was told to remind children that bravery was not about noise or pride, but about patience, wisdom, and strength hidden in silence. The jaguar warriors of history walked not only in the world of men but also in the world of dreams. Even now, when we think of the Aztecs, their images appear, fierce faces painted black and gold, bodies cloaked in spotted skins, their eyes steady and calm, reflecting the eternal watch of the night sky. And so, as we rest beneath our own stars, let us remember that the jaguar's strength is not just in its roar but in its silence. Like the warriors of old, we too may carry within us a quiet courage, a strength that whispers in the dark and keeps us steady when all else fades away. The Aztec calendar was not one single calendar, but two, intertwined like lovers dancing through eternity. The first was the Tenochtitlán, the sacred calendar of 260 days. This was no ordinary measure of time. It was mystical, spiritual, filled with meaning. Each day had its sign, each sign had its number, and each number had its destiny. A child's fate, a warrior's courage, a priest's vision, all could be read from these days, as if the calendar whispered the secrets of existence. The second was the Huitzilopochtli, the solar year of 365 days. This was the calendar of agriculture, of the cycles of maize, of rain, of planting and harvest. It told the people when to sow seeds, when to honor the rain gods, when to give thanks for the sun's warmth. It was the rhythm of earthly life, the heartbeat of villages and fields. Now imagine these two calendars, turning together, like great gears in a cosmic machine. Every 52 years, they aligned perfectly. A sacred moment known as the New Fire Ceremony. This was no small event. It was the very renewal of the world. The Aztecs believed that when the 52-year cycle ended, the universe itself might come to an end, unless the fire was reborn. On that night, all the fires across the empire were extinguished. Imagine the darkness, the city of Tenochtitlán, usually alive with torches, hearths, and sacred flames, now wrapped in shadow. Families huddled together, their homes cold, waiting in silence. Priests climbed to the top of the hill of the star, outside the city, carrying the tools of fire. And there, when the stars aligned, they pierced the chest of a sacrificial victim and lit a flame in the hollow of his body. This was the new fire, the fire of renewal. From this sacred flame, messengers carried torches back to every temple, every home, every hearth. Light returned to the world, and with it, the reassurance that time would go on. The calendar was more than dates and festivals. It was the map of destiny. Each of the 20-day signs carried symbols that spoke to the Aztecs in a language of myth. There was crocodile, the beginning, the primal waters of creation. There was wind, the breath of life, and house, the shelter of family. Serpent, death, jaguar, eagle, and flower, all were there, reminders that the forces of nature and spirit shaped every human life. Priests studied these signs with great care. They could tell whether a day was auspicious for battle, or unlucky for planting. They could guide a family in choosing names for a child, names that tied them to the rhythm of the cosmos. In this way, no act, no choice, was ever separated from the divine. But the calendar was not only a tool of destiny. It was also a mirror of the Aztec understanding of the universe. To them, time was cyclical. The world had been created and destroyed not once, but many times. Each sun, each era, had its beginning and its end. We live now, they believed, under the fifth sun. The four before us had perished in wind, fire, flood, and jaguars. The calendar reminded them that this too could pass, that the sun itself needed nourishment, blood, sacrifice, devotion, to continue its path across the sky. The great sun stone, often mistakenly called a calendar, was a monument to this vision of time. Carved in basalt, massive and majestic, it displayed the face of Tenochtitlán, the sun god, at its center. Around him were symbols of the previous worlds, and around those, the circles of days and cosmic forces. It was not simply a record of time, but a map of existence, a reminder of the fragility and endurance of life. And so, when the people looked to the calendar, they did not see mere numbers. They saw their ancestors, their gods, their fate. The 260-day cycle spoke of the hidden rhythms, the unseen currents of divine will. The 365-day cycle spoke of the tangible, the sowing of maize, the gathering of food, the sustaining of families. Together, they formed the harmony of heaven and earth, spirit and body, mystery and daily life. Imagine living in such a world, where time itself is sacred. Each sunrise is not just another day, but a gift of the gods, a victory of the sun over darkness. Each festival is not merely tradition, but an act that keeps the universe alive. Each year is not simply a passage, but a sacred cycle of renewal, woven into the fabric of eternity. The sacred calendar gave order, but it also gave meaning. In the quiet of night, when the stars shone above Tenochtitlán, perhaps a priest would look upward and see in the constellations not distant suns, but signs of the gods' will. Perhaps a mother, cradling her child, would whisper the day sign of their birth, believing it carried the shape of their destiny. Perhaps a warrior, before battle, would ask the priest if the day was favorable, if the gods would walk beside him on the field. And so, the calendar was not just a measure of days, but a companion to life itself. It was the whisper of the divine in every heartbeat, every planting, every breath. To the Aztecs, to live was to live within the rhythm of sacred time. As you rest now, and let these quiet tales guide you into sleep, imagine yourself lying beneath the stone of the sun, feeling its carvings beneath your fingertips, tracing the symbols of days long past. Imagine the turning of the two great calendars, their cycles intertwining like the soft rhythm of your own breath. Time passes, yes, but in cycles, in circles, in endless return. There is no hurry, no rush, only the eternal dance of day and night, sun and moon, life and death. Let us drift once more into the quiet embrace of story. Imagine the hush of night across the Valley of Mexico, the city of Tenochtitlan settling into darkness, and the stars glimmering softly above. In those ancient days, the Aztec people believed that even as they closed their eyes in sleep, the sun was not gone. It was on a journey, a long, mysterious, and sacred path through the underworld. Tonight, let us follow the sun on its endless voyage, tracing its rise, fall, and rebirth across the sky. The Aztec world revolved around cycles. Day and night were not merely passing moments, they were part of a grand rhythm that bound all living beings together. The sun was at the very heart of this rhythm, the central force that ensured crops would grow, that warmth would return, and that life itself could continue. Without the sun, the people believed, the earth would wither into stillness. And yet, the sun was not invincible. Each evening, as it dipped below the horizon, it entered dangerous realms. The Aztecs imagined that the sun descended into Mictlan, the underworld, where shadows whispered and strange beings lurked. There, the sun had to fight, to travel, to endure, so that it could rise again at dawn. In this endless cycle, the sun was more than light. It was sacrifice. It was strength. It was hope. The Aztecs honored the sun as Tonatiuh, the fifth sun of the universe. They believed that 4 previous suns had existed before, each ruling over an age of the world, each destroyed in its time. Floods, jaguars, winds, and fires had ended those worlds. Ours, they said, was the 5th age, the age of movement, powered by the life of Tonatiuh. And though this sun shone brightly, it could only continue if nourished, if supported, if remembered. So the people looked to the sky each morning, grateful for its return, yet always aware that its journey was fragile. They told tales of its nightly path, where it faced the spirits of the underworld, where it wrestled against the forces of chaos. They imagined it carried a warrior's shield, defending itself against shadows until it could return, radiant and triumphant, to the eastern horizon. But the sun was not alone. Alongside it traveled the spirits of fallen warriors and women who had died in childbirth. To the Aztecs, these souls had given the ultimate sacrifice, and so they were honored as companions of the sun. Warriors who fell bravely in battle would escort the sun in its rise, helping it break through the eastern sky. Women, who gave their strength in childbirth, were seen as equally courageous, guiding the sun as it set. Together, these souls formed a celestial army, ensuring that Tonatiuh would not falter. In this way, life and death intertwined. The Aztecs saw sacrifice as a thread connecting the human world with the divine. Just as warriors and mothers gave of themselves, so too did the people believe that offerings, prayers, and rituals were needed to sustain the great cycle of the sun. Each ceremony, each drumbeat, each chant whispered at dawn or dusk, was a part of this unending support. Imagine, then, the great city at sunrise. Priests, wrapped in cloaks of feathers, standing on the temple steps, raising their arms to greet Tonatiuh. The people gathered below, lifting their faces to the light, feeling warmth spill over the canals and stone walls. For a moment, everything paused. The rising of the sun was not just an ordinary event. It was the return of life, the renewal of the world. And at sunset, the mood shifted. Torches were lit, fires kindled, for night was the time of the sun's trial. As the horizon glowed with fading red, the people whispered prayers, hoping that Tonatiuh would survive the darkness. The stars above became guides, marking the path of the sun as it journeyed beneath the earth. The Aztecs wove these beliefs into their calendar, into their festivals, into their very sense of time. Each season, each ceremony, reflected the sun's power. When fields of maize grew tall and golden, it was Tonatiuh's gift. When rains fell, nourishing the soil, it was in harmony with the sun's strength. Life was always seen in balance with the celestial cycle. There is something deeply comforting in this vision. The sun's journey, its nightly descent and morning rise, mirrors our own days. We rest, we dream, we awaken anew. Just as the sun braves the underworld to rise again, we too pass through our own challenges and return with light. As you listen, let the rhythm of this story wrap around you like a soft blanket. Imagine the sun, glowing and warm, sinking slowly into a horizon of deep orange and violet. Picture it traveling through shadowed caverns, through rivers of night, through forests where strange creatures linger. See it fighting, not with anger, but with determination, carrying the light forward so that dawn can come. And then, picture its return. The first pale glow at the edge of the sky. The slow bloom of pink and gold. The spreading warmth that touches mountaintops, rivers, and valleys. This is the gift of the sun's eternal journey. This is the promise that day will always follow night. In the quiet of their world, the Aztecs carried this story not as fear, but as trust. They knew the sun's cycle was fragile, but they also believed in the strength of sacrifice, of honor, of devotion. Each dawn was not simply light, it was victory. Each night was not simply dark, it was courage. And so, as you rest now, you may carry this same comfort. Just as the sun will rise again tomorrow, so too will you find renewal. Each day is a new cycle, a chance to begin again, a promise written in the sky itself. Let the thought settle gently in your heart. The sun's eternal journey is also your journey. Moving through shadows, finding light, returning always to warmth and peace. Rest with that thought, soft and steady, like the beat of a drum far in the distance. The sun continues its path, and so do you. The city of Tenochtitlan, the shimmering jewel of the Aztec world, once seemed eternal. Rising proudly from the waters of Lake Texcoco, it was a city of dazzling temples, great causeways, and busy markets where every sound blended into a living chorus of civilization. For generations, it had thrived under the blessing of the gods and the discipline of its people. But all things, even the grandest, must eventually meet their twilight. The story of the fall of Tenochtitlan is not simply a tale of battle and conquest, it is also the story of destiny, of omens, and of the fragility of human dreams in the face of time. Long before the arrival of the Spaniards, whispers of prophecy had stirred in the hearts of the people. The Aztecs believed that every age of the world ended in destruction, that one sun gave way to another. Some priests read omens in the night sky, comets that flashed like fiery spears, or strange lights that flickered upon the horizon. Others saw meaning in the behavior of animals or the trembling of the earth. For some, these signs foretold the downfall of their world. Yet life in Tenochtitlan went on, with music and laughter, with trade and ceremony, as though the people were dancing upon the edge of fate. When Hernán Cortés and his companions first appeared upon the eastern shores, the Aztecs struggled to interpret them. Were these strangers men, or were they divine messengers? The stories of Quetzalcoatl's promised return filled the minds of many. Some said the pale-skinned newcomers were connected to the feathered serpent, come to reclaim his rightful place. Others were more cautious, seeing danger cloaked in unfamiliar armor and weaponry. The arrival of these outsiders, carrying thunderous cannons and riding beasts unlike any ever seen, was unlike anything the Aztecs had known before. At first, there was awe, and even a kind of diplomacy. The Emperor Moctezuma, wise yet burdened by uncertainty, chose to welcome the strangers with gifts of gold and jewels. But generosity, instead of easing tensions, only fed the hunger of the invaders. The Spaniards saw the wealth of Tenochtitlan and were captivated by its splendor. Their eyes lingered on the treasures of the temples, on the ornaments worn by nobles, on the rich cloth and bright feathers displayed in the market. To them, the city was not simply a marvel, it was a prize. As days turned into weeks, the uneasy balance between the Aztecs and the Spaniards grew strained. Distrust thickened the air. The people watched as their emperor became more cautious, more withdrawn, as if torn between reverence and dread. Moctezuma's hesitance gave the Spaniards an advantage. They learned the city's ways, its streets, its strengths, and its vulnerabilities. They also discovered allies among neighboring peoples who had long resented Aztec rule. Old rivalries and bitter tributes paid to the empire turned into opportunities for rebellion. The clash, when it finally came, was fierce and tragic. The Spaniards struck, and chaos rippled through the city. Battles were fought in the heart of Tenochtitlan, where once festivals and markets had filled the air with joy. The streets became rivers of struggle, the canals choked with desperation. For the first time, the sacred city trembled beneath foreign weapons. Moctezuma himself met a sorrowful end, his reign extinguished in the storm of violence and uncertainty. His death left the people adrift, leaderless in the most perilous moment of their history. Still, the Aztecs fought. They were a proud and powerful people, skilled warriors who defended their home with fierce determination. For months, they resisted the siege that encircled their city. Yet the invaders brought not only steel and fire, but also disease. Smallpox, carried unknowingly across the sea, spread through the population like a shadow. Entire families were struck down, priests, warriors, children, none were spared. The sickness weakened the city from within, sapping its strength at the very moment when unity was most needed. As the siege tightened, hunger became another enemy. Supplies could not reach the city, and the people who had once celebrated with grand feasts were left with little to eat. The waters of the lake, once shimmering with life, grew hostile as enemy forces controlled the causeways. The sounds of Tenochtitlan, once filled with laughter and song, became the echoes of sorrow, of cries in the night, and of prayers rising desperately to the gods. Finally, the walls of resistance crumbled. On a day heavy with grief, the Spaniards and their allies surged through the broken defenses. Tenochtitlan, the great city of the Mexica, the heart of the empire, fell into silence. Temples that had once reached proudly toward the heavens were torn down, their stones repurposed to build the new city of Mexico. The sacred fires were extinguished, the rituals silenced, and the rhythm of Aztec life was broken. Yet though the city fell, the spirit of its people did not vanish. Survivors carried their traditions, their stories, and their devotion to the gods in their hearts. In quiet places, far from the ruins, the songs were still sung, the tales of creation whispered, and the old gods remembered. Even as new rulers rose, the memory of the Aztecs lingered in the very earth of the valley, in the lake, and in the mountains that had once watched over Tenochtitlan. The fall of the city marked the end of an age, the closing of the fifth sun in the eyes of many. But endings are never truly final. They are woven into new beginnings, just as night gives way to dawn. The Aztecs, though conquered, were not erased. Their blood flowed into the generations that followed, their words blended into new languages, their customs hidden yet enduring, resurfacing in festivals, in art, and in belief. As we reflect upon the fall of Tenochtitlan, it is not merely a story of loss. It is also a story of resilience. The city may have been broken, but the legacy of its people still breathes in the land, in the rivers, and in the quiet telling of their myths. Just as the gods once sacrificed themselves to bring light to the world, so too did the Aztecs sacrifice, suffer, and yet leave behind a memory that time could not extinguish. And so, as night stretches gently over the horizon, imagine the city as it once was, its temples shining in the moonlight, its markets bustling with life, its canals alive with the movement of canoes. Hear the distant echoes of drums and flutes, faint now, yet never entirely gone. For Tenochtitlan may have fallen, but in the realm of dreams, in the quiet tales we tell at bedtime, it still rises, eternal and serene. As we arrive at the final chapter of our quiet journey, let us pause for a moment and let the stories we have explored settle gently in the mind, like soft petals floating on a calm lake. The Aztec world, rich with gods, warriors, and sacred cycles, was a place where every life, every action, and every breath carried meaning. In their eyes, the universe was a vast tapestry, woven from the threads of creation, destruction, and renewal. And tonight, we honor those threads, tracing them one last time through the whispers of myth and memory. The Aztecs believed that the world was shaped by the hands of gods, that creation itself had been an act of sacrifice. From the sun's eternal struggle across the sky, to Quetzalcoatl's teachings of wisdom and kindness, every story we have heard reveals a truth about balance. Life and death were not enemies, but partners in a dance. Darkness and light, wind and fire, jaguar and eagle, all exist side by side, guiding the rhythm of existence. In the soft embrace of night, we can understand why they told these stories, to teach, to comfort, to remind themselves that every ending is also a beginning. Imagine the gentle flow of Lake Texcoco, reflecting the clouds and the distant mountains, shimmering like a mirror. Upon its waters once stood the great city of Tenochtitlan, a place of stone temples, canals, and bustling markets. Its people moved with purpose, guided by the sacred calendar, their lives interwoven with the cycles of the sun, the moon, and the stars. Every day was a gift, every festival a celebration of life and the divine. Think of the warriors we have met, the eagle warriors, soaring in the daylight, and the jaguar warriors, moving with silent strength in the night. Their courage was not born of pride alone, but of devotion, of understanding that their actions were part of something greater. The flowery wars, too, remind us of this delicate balance. Conflict performed not for destruction, but as a sacred offering to maintain the cosmic order. Even in the chaos of battle, the Aztecs saw beauty, honor, and purpose. And then there are the gods, whose presence we felt in every story. Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, who taught humans to live with wisdom, whose breath became the wind that carried life across the valleys. Tenochtitlán, the sun, whose journey through night and day mirrored the cycles of courage and renewal in human hearts. Tlaloc, the rain god, bringing nourishment and sustenance. Huitzilopochtli, the sun and war deity, guiding warriors with strength and clarity. Each god, each spirit, reminded the people that the world is alive, that every gesture and thought resonates through the cosmos. The sacred calendar, with its dual cycles of 260 and 365 days, continues to echo in these tales. It teaches that time is not merely measured, but lived. Every day holds significance, every season carries wisdom. The new fire ceremony, the rhythm of planting and harvest, the readings of signs and omens, they all show a people attuned to the harmony of the universe. By observing time as sacred, the Aztecs found meaning in each moment, however fleeting. Even as we recount the fall of Tenochtitlan, there is a lesson of quiet resilience. The city may have been conquered, the temples toppled, and the people displaced, yet their stories, their myths, their wisdom endured. Like seeds carried on the wind, these tales spread, finding new homes in the hearts of those who remembered. Life, as the Aztecs believed, persists, even after endings. Transformation is a constant companion, and from loss arises continuity. Now, as you lie in the stillness of your own night, let your mind wander through the gardens and temples of that ancient world. Imagine the sun rising, painting the mountains gold. Hear the soft drumbeats in distant plazas, the rustle of feathers and cloth. Smell the scent of flowers offered in ceremonial rites, incense curling upward in gentle spirals. Feel the calm strength of a jaguar warrior's patience, or the soaring freedom of an eagle warrior in flight. Let these images float through your imagination like gentle dreams. The Aztecs believed that every person, like every god and every element of nature, has a role in the grand story of the universe. Our lives, though small in comparison to mountains or stars, are threads in the tapestry. Each thought of kindness, each act of courage, each moment of understanding, contributes to the harmony of existence. Their myths remind us to observe carefully, to act thoughtfully, and to respect the sacredness in all things. As we conclude, think also of the quiet moments we shared, the whispered teachings of the gods, the steady march of the sun, the patient hunt of the jaguar, the solemn rhythm of ritual and ceremony. These stories are gentle reminders that even when the world seems chaotic, there is order, there is meaning, there is beauty. The past and present are connected, and in dreams, we can touch that connection, feeling the pulse of the Aztec world as it continues to whisper through history. Let sleep come softly now, carrying the lessons of courage, harmony, and renewal. Close your eyes, breathe slowly, and imagine the sacred cycles turning above and around you. The wind carries stories, the sun brings warmth, and the night offers a calm embrace. You are part of the endless rhythm, a quiet observer of the eternal dance, resting peacefully as the world continues its journey. In this gentle stillness, let the whispers of Aztec myths fill your dreams. Let the gods and warriors, the sun and wind, the calendar and ceremonies, all become a soft lullaby. Their stories, once spoken aloud, now rest within you, comforting and steady, reminding you that even in endings, there is always a promise of renewal. And with that, dear listener, may your sleep be deep, your dreams full of wonder, and your heart filled with the quiet magic of the Aztec world.